are about to enter Habs After Dark with Recliner Sports.
3, 2, 1, 0.
What is going on, gang? Welcome to another episode of Habs After Dark. My name is Devin. This is Recliner Sports, and this is another episode of our Montreal Canadiens post-game show, Habs After Dark. Bienvenue tout le monde à notre émission de Bleu, Blanc, Rouge, Nuit. Je m'appelle Devin. C'est une émission d'après-match des Canadiens de Montréal. Ce soir, c'est une défaite face aux Sénateurs d'Ottawa, 5-2. A 5-2 loss to the heated rivals from Ottawa, the Ottawa Senators. A 5-2 loss for the Canadiens tonight. That's 12 goals to 4 in their last two games to the Colorado Avalanche and now to the Ottawa Senators. Interesting game. I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are about tonight's game. But before we get started, I welcome everybody to join in, and feel free to post your comments and questions in the comment section. I would be very happy to answer them and to engage in conversation. I much prefer to have a chat with you guys than simply just to ramble on myself and tell you about the game. I certainly will tell you about the game, but I would much rather engage with you guys through your questions and comments than just simply sit here and talk all by myself. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have thoughts about the game, I would certainly welcome you to post them, and we'll talk about it. Tout le monde, on espère que vous donnerez vos questions, vos commentaires. J'aime beaucoup avoir des conversations avec vous. J'aime mieux parler avec vous au lieu de moi de parler toute seule ici. Moi, parler du match. J'aimerais mieux avoir une conversation avec vous. Alors, si vous avez des questions, des commentaires, vos pensées au sujet du match, qu'en pensez-vous du match des Canadiens? Je pense qu'on va peut-être en parler au sujet des arbitres. On va parler au sujet de la inconstance de l'équipe des Canadiens. Pourquoi qu'ils ne sont pas capables de jouer un match complet de 60 minutes? Pourquoi c'est toujours une période où ils ne jouent pas bien, les deux autres périodes, ils jouent mieux? Why is it that the Canadiens don't seem to be able to put together, a full 60-minute game? Why is it that, usually there's at least one period where they tend to struggle? I don't know. I don't have an answer. I think it is something that young teams struggle with, and I think the lack of maturity on this team, is still showing itself a little bit, and that will be something that hopefully will come with time and experience. But for now, they do seem like a team that isn't able to put together a full 60-minute hockey game, and that right now is hurting them. They kind of got away with it a little bit at the beginning of the season. They were able to come back. We saw all those overtime games that they came back in to win. But right now they're getting too far behind and they're chasing the game, and it's not working for them. So Bushy says the power play is still going. Yes, if we're looking for a silver lining in tonight's game, Bushy, you're absolutely right. The power play was, I believe, 2 for 2 tonight, despite the fact that they probably should have had a couple more power plays that the referees decided not to call. If you're watching on TikTok, guys, come join us on YouTube. We're live on YouTube. If you have questions, I'm not able to respond over here and over there at the same time. So I invite you, if you have questions, concerns, anything you want to talk about the game, come and join us on YouTube. So I see you guys over there. Pop on over. We would love to have you, and we'd love to answer your questions. The Canadiens power play continues to roll. I'm not going to blame the referees for the loss tonight. I don't think the referees were at fault for the loss tonight. I think the Canadiens lost this game all by themselves, but the refereeing, again, was horrendous, as it typically is in the NHL. It was just really, really bad tonight. Very inconsistent, very uneven from one team to the other. Calling, cheesy, cheap penalties early in the game and then just burying their whistles in the third period. That last goal from Brady Tkachuk is a prime example. A penalty behind the Ottawa net against Gallagher, which would have been a penalty, 10 times out of 10 in the first two periods, and the referees just decide to ignore it. Then, they decide to call Gallagher because he gets frustrated. And then, Tkachuk goes down the other end and scores a goal, right? It's just, Lars Eller buries, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Noah Dobson's face into the ice. Noah Dobson gets knocked down, and while he's laying on the ice, Lars Eller cross-checks his head into the ice, while he's laying on the ice. No penalty in the first period. Brady Tkachuk wrestles with Josh Anderson at the bench as Anderson's trying to get off the ice. Holds on to Anderson's stick while he's trying to, I think it was Anderson, trying to get back, Anderson's trying to get back in the play. And, Brady, I don't know, maybe it wasn't Anderson. Might have been somebody else. But anyways, Brady Tkachuk ends up with the Canadiens player's stick on the bench. No penalty, right? They go over and talk to him about it, right? Oh, we got to go over and talk to him. Don't do that, Brady. That's bad. But meanwhile, they call, all these little cheesy little penalties that don't really, mean anything, but they let everything go. Again, I'm not blaming the referees for the win or the loss tonight. Clearly the Canadiens didn't play well enough to win, but again, the refereeing is just miserable in the NHL. What's going on, Intertap? It's great to see you. It's a tough question. The Canadiens didn't play well tonight, and there's no doubt about it, but I don't think we should live and die by whether the Canadiens win or lose. Obviously, it's more fun when they win, and it gives us, more fun, better conversations. But I'm happy to be here talking with you guys. I don't think it's the end of the world for this team. The team's still in pretty good spot as far as the standings are concerned. They're still in a pretty good place as far as where they are as a team. Obviously they're going to hopefully get Kirby Dach back soon. And then in the new year, they'll get, hopefully, Caden Gooley will be back. And then, maybe even Patrick Laine. And we'll see how things go from there. So it's good to have you here, Intertap. Welcome, as always. You're always a fun time, and you always ask really good questions. So I'm happy that you're here. The thing I wanted to talk about the most about tonight's game, and one of the things I think that the team has sort of fallen into, and I think this is, I think in a way this is kind of the coaching staff's fault too, is that I feel like the team is now gone back to playing. They're playing the other team's game when they play a game, instead of going in and saying, we're the boss, we're going to dictate the play, we're going to go and play our game and force you to respond to us. I feel like the Canadiens go into games now thinking, how do we play the Ottawa Senators? How do we play the Colorado Avalanche? How do we play these guys? How do we play those guys? How do we play? Instead of saying, well, let's go play our game and force them to figure out how to beat us, right? I think we even saw Marty St. Louis admit that to a certain extent during his press conference yesterday, where he talked about, the fact that he, sort of changed the way they approach a game a little bit because of the way Colorado plays, that they wanted to sit back a little bit and play more of a neutral zone trap rather than play the system that they've been playing all year. And, we saw that didn't really work. But I think that tonight, I thought the Canadiens went out and they decided that they had to match physicality with the Ottawa Senators, right? They didn't want to be, overpowered or they didn't want to, lose that physical game. And to be honest with you, I don't think they did lose that physical game, right? I thought from a physical perspective, I thought they stood up very well to the Ottawa Senators, right? Ottawa loves to play that game. It's their style. And, the Canadiens out-hit Ottawa today, and I think they probably got the better of most of the physical battles tonight. But guess what? Because they played Ottawa's game, despite winning that physical aspect, they lost the game because they weren't playing their own game. They weren't playing, that game where they create turnovers in the neutral and defensive zone. They don't play that game where they play a quick transition. They don't play that game where they kill plays in their own end and turn the puck over and turn it the other way and force the other team to respond to them. Instead, they were out there trying to make sure that they threw as many body checks as the Ottawa Senators and that they won those physical battles. And it didn't work, right? It didn't work. They the Canadiens out hit Ottawa tonight by a margin of, I think it was 33-21 or something like that. But they lost the game, right? So they lost, they won the battle, but they lost the war. And, that's not what they need to be doing. They need to be going and playing their game. 33-21 were the hits in favor of the Canadiens tonight. So they did lose the face-off dot, but they came back significantly. I think after the first period, Intertap, they only won 1/3. I think they were 66% to 33% after the first period, but they definitely came back. Intertap says, we simply don't have the depth yet to overcome the injuries sustained. You know what? I don't fully agree with you on that, Intertap. I think that I don't see that there's a lack of talent on the ice for the Montreal Canadiens right now. In fact, I think, there was, some really nice signs from guys like Joe Veleno tonight. I thought played a very good game. Like Joe Veleno finished the game tonight with a 90. Let's just stand by. Ottawa, Montreal, player tables, on ice, all. There we go. Joe Veleno tonight, in 5-on-5, or even strength, his expected goals for percentage was 53%. But at one point in the game, it was in the 90s. So, Arbor Jackine, 93% tonight. Pretty impressive. So, I don't feel like there's a lack of depth. I just feel like they're losing their shape a little bit. They're losing their system. They're not playing the way the way they're designed to play, the way they've been built to play. They're not doing those things that we see them do when they play really, really well, when they're successful. Like like I said, creating turnovers in the neutral zone, killing plays in the defensive zone. Like tonight, the defensive zone coverage was terrible. They were running around their own end trying to hit guys. Meanwhile, they're leaving guys all alone in front of the net. The Zetterlund goal, all alone. The second goal, I can't remember who scored the second goal, but he was basically standing at the top of Montembeau's crease all by himself. Now, Montembeau looked terrible on that play. He looked like a peewee goalie, but, that player shouldn't be all alone in front of the net like that. They were just running around trying to hit instead of, playing their game. 5-on-5 play, yeah, I don't know. Their penalty kill and their power play has been good. But again, I don't know that. To me, it's more about them not playing their game. When they go out and they play their game, when they realize they're good, and that they they have to go out and instead of playing playing to beat Ottawa, they go out. They should be going out and playing and forcing Ottawa to beat them. And I know I'm repeating myself a little bit on that, but that's to me the biggest thing. Like I didn't see a great difference 5-on-5 tonight. Like the shots were close, the shot attempts were relatively close. It's just I don't know. I think the talent is there. I just think that the consistent performance, like the full 60 minutes of they went out, they scored the first goal, and then they let down. Right? They let down and they let Ottawa score a goal to get right back into it. They played, decent hockey for the first 10 minutes of the first period, and then they kind of went to sleep in the second 10 minutes of the first period. And then they kind of went to sleep in the the first 10 minutes of the second period, and ended up down 4-1. Then they kind of woke up and played well in the second half of the second period. And then they played okay in the third, but not well enough to get back into it. And it's just Entertap has his picks for the A team. Yeah, he's pretty close. You're pretty close there, Entertap. I thought really seriously about. So I think you've got 3 of 4, and the one you don't have, I thought seriously about having him. So. What would I say is their identity? I really can't get a handle on it, to be honest. What is their identity? I mean, I think that's a pretty like wide ranging general question. I think on the ice, their identity when they're playing well is they're a young team that plays with speed. They have good structure. They are their game is predicated on creating turnovers and transition play and scoring off the rush. I think their special teams is has the potential to be I won't say elite, but I think they have the personnel to be tops in the league or near the top of the league in both penalty kill and power play. Um, I mean, if that's, as far as their identity sort of in general, the culture, I think they're a team that is really well coached. I think they're a team that is close knit. I think they're a team that is growing. They're growing together, and they're a team that I think one of the things the team is trying to achieve is that they're trying to get these guys to an accelerated point in their career. They're trying to get them to a point in their career that is ahead of their age. Right? They want these guys to be veterans who understand the value of winning and what it takes to win and how to win in the NHL when they're 24, 25, 26, rather than when they're 30, 31, 32, right? They want these guys to be veteran hockey players with veteran hockey mentalities and veteran hockey experience sooner than you normally would expect, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense, but so I mean, to me, that's what I see as their identity. I know every team will say, well, oh, we're tight and we're a close-knit group and we all get along, but I do think that there's a little something more there to this team, and we've seen multiple players now take less money to stay in Montreal. We hear the way they talk about each other. We see the way that Marty St. Louis coaches. We see the way that he talks about the game. We see the way he communicates with the media. We see the way these guys train and hang out with each other, in the off season and between games and stuff like that. And so, I do think that there's part of their identity that comes from that. But as far as their identity on the ice is concerned, I think it revolves in large part around the systems that Marty St. Louis is trying to put into place. And, it's weird because, I mean, in a lot of markets, I don't think the hockey fans would sort of have much of a sense of what the team's systems are. But, being that it's Montreal, I think we kind of, have a little bit of a better idea about that. Bushy, yes, says growing pains. And Entertap says rebuilds are never linear. I think those comments probably go together with one another, but yeah, I mean, you're right. You're both right. They're going to go through growing pains, right? It's they're young, they're inexperienced. We've heard Marty St. Louis going back to the beginning of last season talk about learning how to win, right? We heard all these catchphrases. They need to learn how to win. They need to stop doing things that help the other team. They need to find their chair. They need to do the they have to do the details or the unexciting, the non-exciting things so that they are able to then do the fun things, right? They need to take care of the details so that they can then engage in the skilled aspects of the game. Like we hear and these are not physical things that they have to learn. These are sort of mental things. They're like, how are you a professional? How do you go out every night and do your job and be a professional hockey player, right? And some of these guys are, Demidov's 19, Slavkovsky's 21, Hudson's 21. You're relying on, Arbor Jackey's 23. Who else is young out there? Kapanen is 21, I believe. They've got guys in really, really important positions on this team that have really important roles, right? And a lot of these guys are young, right? And they're relying on kids who are 20, 21, 22 years old in very important positions. Maybe that's the problem. Then can't always rush development, especially when they develop at different levels. Example, look at Slav finally starting to come into his own, but took lots of nurturing. Yeah, and I mean, there's different aspects to Slav's game, right? I think people saw him coming into his own a little bit last year from the physical perspective of his game, but now that he's been moved onto a second line and given a different role, we're seeing him develop more the skill side of his game, right? And Cole Caulfield's a great example of that, right? Cole Caulfield sacrificed a certain portion of his game to improve another part of his game, right? So there was a little over a year there where people were concerned that Cole Caulfield wasn't able to score goals anymore and that he wasn't, going to live up to expectations. But the reality was he was working on other parts of his game, and then eventually he brought everything together. And, the exciting thing about Slavkovsky is going to be, and we're seeing it now, is that, he's combining the skill component of his game with, the physicality of using his size, right? So now he's carrying the puck more. He's more confident passing the puck. He's making smarter decisions. He's more confident, with his shot, and he's shooting the puck and he's doing all of those things. He's also, winning battles along the board, using his size, retrieving pucks, getting, setting up his teammates. And, it's exciting. He's developing some chemistry with Ivan Demidov. And, the exciting thing for these young players is that when they start to bring all of the components of their game together and they become the picture is finally done, right? The painting's finally done, or the puzzle's finally done, right? All the pieces are finally together, and then you get a real, idea of what this guy's going to be, right? Everyone's complaining, oh, Slav's a bust. Well, he's a 50-point guy 2 years in a row and he's still only 21. There's more highway in front of him. So, I think you're right. You can't rush development. You can't rush a rebuild. You can't, unfortunately, obviously we were all excited that the Canadiens made the playoffs last year, but in a way, it did them a bit of a disservice, and that now everybody kind of has these expectations for the team. Everyone keeps talking about, oh, they need this and they need that. They need to add, a second line center, or they don't. What this team needs is time, right? What this team needs is experience. What this team needs is an opportunity to continue to grow and get better, right? They don't need to go out and find, somebody to play second line center. They don't need another goalie. They don't need this. They don't need, if the right deal comes around and they can find that, then fantastic. That's awesome, right? If Kent Hughes can pull off, another deal where he gets a player who fits with the group and can help the group, and he gets a good deal, then yeah, that's great. But they don't need to go out and boost the development of this team. They don't need to go and get a guy so that they can win a round or two in the playoffs this year or get in Stanley Cup contention. They need time. They need experience, right? They need to play hockey and get out there and learn, how to be a winning hockey team, how to win games, how to lose games, how to play 82 games, how to play a full 60 minutes. That's what they need, right? Frank says they have to take more defense and work on their goaltending. Well, yeah, I mean, Montembeault has struggled. I don't think there's any debate about that. Dobesh has too, right? Tonight, realistically, the expected goals tonight against the Canadiens were 4.12, right? So Ottawa had 4.12 goals, expected goals, and Montembeault let in 5. So, not a huge difference. So, I don't know, his save percentage was not the greatest, but in fact, his expected goals against, it was 4.48 tonight. So, his expected goals against was not crazy tonight. So, I don't know. I'm not going to suggest for a minute that Montembeault has played well and that he doesn't have to play better. I mean, he clearly does. But, I don't know. Danilo, come join us on YouTube. That's a good question. Do you think we played physically enough? Well, what do you think the hits were tonight? What do you think the hits were for each team tonight? See if you can guess. What's up, Luca or Lucky? Welcome back. Long time no see. As for Slav, some trains take a minute to get up to speed, but then you better get out of the way. Yeah, I mean, I've been a Slav supporter from day one. I mean, I know Entertap, if you're still here, you'll remember that I had a big argument with Coach Frenchie last year because Coach Frenchie, concluded that Slavkovsky was too soft and that, Slavkovsky was never going to make it in the NHL because he didn't use his size enough and, at 6'4" or whatever he is, that, he was too soft and that, you can't teach that. And, and I said, well, give him some time, let him develop. He's only 20 years old. And, but, Canadiens fans can be impatient and, you can say that he takes a lot, but he hasn't taken a lot of time. He had 50 points in the NHL as a 19-year-old. Not a lot of guys do that. He's just turned 21 years old, I believe, and he's already well beyond 120 points in the NHL. So, I don't know. Like I don't have any issue about that. Marty made a comment in the post-game conference about attitude. One of it was directed at certain players. I haven't seen the press conference, Lucky. I will definitely. I typically watch it the following day. I'll be interested to hear a little bit more about that. I really believe the lack of a strong veteran 2C is visibly clear. But in what way, Entertap? In what way is it visibly clear? I mean, the Canadiens are in a playoff spot. I know they could play better. And obviously, if you added a veteran 2C, they probably would have more wins right now, and they'd be in a better spot. But again, to what end? To what end do you like? What are we trying to do? Like, what are the Canadiens trying to accomplish? Right? Like, are they? Like if they? Like, I don't like. I don't know what it is. Again, adding a veteran, established, adding a Nazem Kadri or adding a Ryan O'Reilly or a Sidney Crosby or whatever. Obviously, that's going to win more games for the Canadiens. But to what end? To what end? Like, those guys are not going to be around when the rest of the team is ready to win. Yes, they'll probably lend some experience and some veteran, the veteranness or whatever, their experience will rub off on some of the younger players, and there'll be a benefit to that. But, what does it help the Montreal Canadiens if they can be better now by adding an outside element that won't be around when they really need it? Or would you rather develop somebody who will play that role when the time comes? Right? Like everyone talks about Anaheim right now, and I don't get me wrong, Anaheim's playing great hockey and they're playing well, but they're relying very heavily on veteran hockey players who won't be around in 2 or 3 years. So what happens when those guys are gone, right? What happens when Chris Kreider isn't putting up 30 goals? Or what happens when Jacob Trouba's not there? Or what happens when, these other veterans that they have are not, like, they're building, and yes, hopefully you bring in younger players to follow up on those guys, but wouldn't you rather this team grow as the team that's going to eventually take you to the place that you're trying to get to? What's up, Antoine or Antoine? What's going on, pal? Montembeau has to leave. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to go, Antoine? And who's going to replace him? How much longer will Montreal goalie coach realistic? Je comprends pas, Antoine. How much longer will Montreal goalie coach realize before it's too late? I'm not. Je comprends pas ton question. Again, I get the frustration with Samuel Montembeau, but realistically, I mean, he's not going anywhere. Um, there's no one to replace him. The Canadiens are not going to succeed this year unless both Montembeau and Dobesh are playing well. So, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to say to that. Like, you're not calling up Fowler, obviously. You're not calling up Kakinen. I don't think that's going to help. You're not trading Montembeau. I mean, realistically, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. Can't harvest all the D-men that they have: Matheson, Hudson, Dobson, Jacky, Struble, Gooley, Engstrom, Reinbacher, etc. Deal from strength to get a solid 2C, allows Kapanen to be a 3C. And I agree with that. I agree. I mean, ideally, you're making trades, from a surplus, right? You're trading a surplus in return for something that you need. But again, I don't think you're trading that surplus to bring in a 35-year-old centerman. I think you're trading that surplus to bring in, somebody who, fits more with the group from an age perspective, somebody who will be there when your team is, ready to achieve its goals, right? You're not bringing in a guy who's 35 or 36 years old to come in for, 2 or 3 years, and then retire, right? You're bringing in a guy who, will be with the group for the next 7, 8, 9 years. Um, Also, keep in mind that the Canadiens' long-term goal is not to win one Stanley Cup. The Canadiens' long-term goal is to be perennial contenders. So that means you're not just emptying your, that means you're not, emptying your cupboards to bring in players from outside. I mean, right? It means, you're not, giving up on, draft picks. You're not giving up on prospects. There's going to come a time when, the window closes on this group, when your Nick Suzuki's and your Noah Dobsons and these guys are in their 30s and are ready to move on, and you're going to need to have draft picks, and you're going to have prospects coming up if you want to be a perennial contender, right? If you don't want to be a victim of the cycle of good year, good year, good year, good year, and then like all the way down and start from scratch. Like, the Canadiens don't want to start from scratch every 5, 6, 7 years. They want to be a team that's consistently good and consistently contends. And so, they're not looking to follow, the Las Vegas, Golden Knights, or the way some of the other teams have done it. Frank says, I think the pressure of the media is making it worse on everybody. I agree. You let them develop. I mean, it's always tough to play in Montreal, right? The media in Montreal is always tough. That's part of the gig of playing in Montreal. I think the fans bring a certain level of pressure to playing, being a part of the Montreal Canadiens. I think that the media does. Even if it's just all of the different crazy conversations that are going on, right? I mean, name me a player on the Canadiens that hasn't been discussed, in a trade. I mean, it's, this week it was Caden Gooley. What has Caden Gooley done? Poor kid's been, injured for a month and a half, sitting on the sidelines trying to come back, and, they're talking about trading him today. Like, I don't get it. But, yeah. Only thing I will say is, playing a division rival at home, I was expecting a tad more intensity. Yeah, I don't know that there was a lack of intensity tonight. Lucky for me. I mean, I think the physicality was there, and I thought the intensity was there. They just didn't do. They didn't really stick to their plan very well, right? They were too busy running around trying to hit everything that moves, when they probably should have been focused more on playing their systems. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't. To me, I don't see the rush enter tap to bring in a 2C. And again, if they do bring one in, I think you and I are probably on the same page a little bit. To me, ideally, you've heard Kent Hughes talk about, somebody who can grow with the group. But again, like, things change, right? And, I know that everyone's written off Kirby Doc. I haven't. I thought before he got injured, he was playing really good hockey, and there was an opportunity. There was an opportunity for him to fit that role. But there's also guys coming up, right? There's guys. Again, I'm not saying for a minute, that or putting expectations on Michael Hage. I don't know what he's going to become, but if he becomes what he looks like he's capable of becoming, then again, I'm not saying it's going to happen next year or even the year after that, but in the next few years, you've got guys like Hage, Jarofsky who could fit into the plans. And there's all kinds of different things that could happen that you just don't predict, right? I remember a couple of, this is one of my great examples, but I remember a couple of years ago, the Canadiens chose not to draft Adam Fox. I think it was Adam Fox, because they felt like they already had a small offensive defenseman in Victor Mete, right? And, a year later, the situation was quite different, right? So things change. Um, you know, it's just, who knows what's going to happen. Who knows what's going to happen. So again, like sort of planning down the road like that. I mean, you're rebuilding. Right now they're not in a terrible spot. Obviously, yeah, you'd like to have a 50 goal scorer playing center on your second line. Don't get me wrong. But right now their second line looks pretty good. Slavkovsky, Kapanen, and Demidov. And I'm not panicking about that. Preferably a left-handed center with solid two-way play. I know easier said than done, but Hugo has to continue to kick tires and create packages that someone can't say no to. Seattle might be such a team. Well, I mean, one thing you can assure yourself of is that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are going to continue to kick tires. I think they're probably amongst the most active managers in the entire NHL. Kent Hughes, I think, enters the discussion. I've talked about this before. I think he, anytime he hears about a player being available, I think he makes a phone call, even if he's not really that interested in the player, because, even if you're, you make that call because even if you're not really that interested in the player, maybe there's another guy, right? I think, we saw that with Zachary Bolduc. I think initially the conversation was about Jordan Kyrou. And, they couldn't work things out with Jordan Kyrou, but they figured out that, well, maybe we can get Zachary Bolduc, and they pulled off a big trade there. So Kent Hughes is a guy who, I think Kent Hughes believes that it's his job to turn over every stone and to explore every opportunity. And, in doing so, I think he creates relationships with other GMs. As a new GM, I think that's probably important for him to do. But it also, it keeps the conversation going, right? It keeps his number at the top of, other managers' Rolodex. And when things are happening and when things come around, that relationship and that conversation is there already. And, he's, first in the conversation. And, again, I don't think that Kent Hughes is out there shopping anybody. I don't think Kent Hughes is out there, desperately looking for anything. But I also don't think that there's a stone that he leaves unturned. And if, he hears that Joe Blow in Nashville or whoever in Seattle might be on the trading block, then he's going to call and find out what the ask is for it. And if something can be worked out and it works for the Canadiens, then he'll do it. But yeah, I mean, I think they're, kicking tires is something that I think Kent Hughes does every single day. I think they're probably going to wait until the trade deadline to see where the team is at. Again, I don't think they'll wait till the trade deadline. I don't think the trade deadline will make any difference to them. It's going to all be about whether or not they can make a deal that they feel helps this team. And what I mean by that is they need a player who I think fits their plan as far as age and position and all that kind of stuff. And the return is right. And, I don't think they're going to sacrifice any great amount of assets from a, prospect or draft point of view. I don't think they're gonna, they're not gonna empty the cupboards that way. They're just not, and we'll see where it goes. But they're not going to trade away. The other thing they're not going to do is they're not going to trade away any prospects that they don't feel they've had the proper opportunity to assess. Right? They're not going to trade any prospects who they haven't had the opportunity to see for an adequate amount of time at the NHL level. Right? They're not going to trade anybody who they don't fully know what they have yet. Right? So Reinbacher, no. Right? They don't know what they have in Reinbacher yet. They drafted him. They love him. They, thought very highly of him, highly enough to draft him 5th overall. And they're not going to move on from him until they have an opportunity to see or to be convinced that he is or isn't the guy for the job, right? Like Mailloux, right? They moved on from Mailloux, but Mailloux had a couple, 3-4 chances to prove that he could make it in the NHL, and he wasn't able to. And I think in their mind, they knew what they had with Mailloux, and they were prepared to move on from him. Joshua Roy, I think he's one. If they got the right offer for Joshua Roy, I think they'd feel comfortable, moving on from him because he's had opportunities to prove what he's capable of in the NHL. I don't believe they're there with Owen Beck. I don't believe they're there. I know they're not there with Reinbacher. So, I think that's something to keep in mind as well when you're looking at, who's going to, who's going to be on the trade block. You can't win a hockey game with only 2 goals in a game like tonight. I agree, Larry. They didn't play good hockey for a long enough period of time. They scored the first goal. They played well for probably the first 10 minutes and then the last 10 minutes of the second period, and then they played mediocre hockey in the third period, but by then it was too late. They were chasing the game, and Ottawa was able to shut them down. They just, like I said earlier, I think, if you weren't here, I think they spent way too much time trying to match physicality with Ottawa, trying to play Ottawa's game. Ottawa's a much more physical team. They rely on the physicality to be who they are, and instead of playing the way they're capable of in their own system, they played Ottawa's, and they it didn't work. All right, Frank. Thank you, pal. Oops, what did I do there? Thank you for popping by, Frank. I do appreciate it. Let's get to the scoreboard here quick, guys. I won't spend too much time on it tonight, but here you see it, a 5-2 final. Ottawa Senators with the victory over the Canadiens. Canadiens get on the board first on the power play. Really nice cross crease pass from Caulfield. Nick Suzuki gets the other assist. Literally like less than 30 seconds later, Fabian Zetterlund scores. He's left alone. A goal from Clevin and Spence. Zub then scores a goal. I'm trying to think. That was the one, I think, he ended up all alone in front of the net. And, Montembeault did not look great on that one. But again, Zub was just left to stand all alone in front of the net. Tkachuk won a battle behind the goal line and was able to feed the puck out in front to Zub, who was all alone. 2-1 after one for the Sens. Ottawa scores on a goal from Sanderson at 5:48. Sanderson just goes wide. I don't think it was a terrible play by Noah Dobson, but he just wasn't able to shut Sanderson down on that play, and Sanderson just sort of cut to the front of the net and beat Montembeault. Batherson then scored a goal to make it 4-1, and things were looking bleak for the Canadiens. A little bit of hope later on in the period. Suzuki with the second power play goal of the game from Caulfield and Hudson. But again, by then it was 4-2, and the Canadiens were kind of chasing the game a little bit, and it was a little bit too much for them to overcome. They played okay in the third period. They just weren't able to break through Ottawa's defensive structure, and Tkachuk scored at 12:43. Again, the referees in the third period I thought were a little bit a little bit off for me. Again, I'm not blaming the game on the referees. It certainly wasn't their fault, but there certainly was some issues with the way the game was officiated tonight in my mind. I won't go through it again. I went through it earlier. If you're watching on a replay, you can go check it out, the first 5 or 10 minutes of the show. Corsi tonight, 62-48, very much in favor of Ottawa. That's shot attempts. Shots on goal were 28-21 for Ottawa. Again, very much in their favor. The hits, again, for those of you who thought that the Canadiens were out physicaled by Ottawa tonight, it just wasn't the case. It was 33-21. Hits were in favor of the Canadiens tonight. It was literally the only category statistically that the Canadiens were better than Ottawa. But again, that's not the way they're going to win games. You're not going to beat the Ottawa Senators by going out there and trying to be more physical than them. It's just not going to happen. It's just, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to go and play Ottawa's game and expect to beat them at it. I would have much rather, seen the Canadiens, use their speed and maintain their system tonight than try to, get as many hits as Ottawa and try and play that game. That's not to say that you back off or back down or let them take advantage of you. But again, you're out there chasing hits. You're not playing your game. Face-off wins, 27-24 in favor of Ottawa. So not too bad, especially considering I think Ottawa was very dominant in the first two periods. But in the third period, I thought the Canadiens did a little bit better there. High danger chances. That's the number that really stands out to me. Again, I wonder if that's actually an accurate number. I'll see if it's been updated on a natural stat trick. But 20-5 is a crazy number. 20 high danger chances to just 5. So those of you who think that Sam Montembeault shit the bed tonight and was the reason why the Canadiens lost, think about the fact that they had 20 high danger chances against them tonight. Right? High danger chances against 20-5. I want to see if I can see here. High danger shots against tonight. 10 high danger shots against Montembeault tonight. 7 medium shots or medium danger and 8 low danger. So more than a third of the shots against Montembeault tonight were high danger shots. So the expected goals were 4.12 to 2.03. Again, not inconsistent with the final score. So again, I'm not saying for a minute that I thought that Montembeault played well tonight. But again, I don't think it was nearly as bad as some people are making it out to be. I don't know about this. I try to be right sometimes, Larry. It doesn't always happen, but every once in a while, I get things right. Could not score goals. Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing so far this year. I think they're doing a better job of scoring goals than they are about keeping the puck out of the net. I mean, what are the standings? Let's see. So, goals for and goals against for the Canadiens this year. So they've got 84 goals for and 92 goals against. So they're averaging more than 3 goals for per game, right? Little over 3, by 3.1 or 3.2, but they're allowing close to 4 points per game, so or 4 goals per game. So I'd much rather see them keep the puck out of the net a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. That's just me. I know that they're scoring goals at a higher pace this year than they were last year, but they haven't really improved that much defensively as far as keeping the puck out of the goal. Again, for me, the standard that I look for, I know Entertap and I have talked about this lots of times. The standard I look for is, you want to score 3 or more goals per game, and you want to allow 3 or fewer goals per game. So right now they're scoring goals at a higher than 3 goals per game rate, but they're allowing, way more than 3 goals per game as well. So I don't know about that. If you're over on TikTok, come join us on YouTube, guys. We're over here talking about the game. We're going to get to the A team now, everybody's favorite part of the show, I think. Entertap already put up his picks for the A team. I don't know if anybody else wants to do that. But here are our picks for tonight. So the A team for tonight, as picked by me, Cole Caulfield, Joe Veleno, Nick Suzuki, and Juraj Slafkovsky. I think that Caulfield, Slafkovsky, and Suzuki are probably no-brainers. Pretty big game on the power play for those guys tonight. Joe Veleno might be a bit of the wild card in that pick. I just thought he had a good game tonight. I thought he played well. His advanced numbers were impressive. Let me just see on ice. Expected goals for percentage. He was, near the top of the team in 5-on-5. He was third on the team, I think. Fourth. Arbor Jackeye, though, also had a really good game. I agree with you on that, Entertap, and I considered putting him in. Arbor Jackeye, by the way, tonight was 91% expected goals for. Best on the team by a very wide margin, by like 30%. Arbor Jackeye's expected goals for percentage tonight on 5-on-5 was 90.99%, and the next best on the team was 59%. And in all situations, he was also 90.99. So Arbor Jackeye probably is deserving of being on the A team tonight as well. Cole Caulfield, again, just a solid game, as you would expect from Caulfield. What did he have 2 points tonight or just the one? I think he ended up with 2 points in the end. Let me see. Yeah, 2 points tonight for Caulfield. 2 points for Suzuki. Slafkovsky, I just thought had a really solid game. Yeah, both were power play goals. You're correct, Larry. Slafkovsky, again, he just continues to play better and better and better. I thought he'd played well even before he came off the first line and got moved down to the second line, if we want to say moved down. I think he just continues to get better. I'm impressed with his game. He seems more confident, more comfortable out there. He's carrying the puck a little bit more. There seems to be some chemistry with him and Demidov. I still look forward to the game where Demidov just kind of starts to get it, right? Like Demidov's playing well, don't get me wrong. He's getting his points. He's leading the league for points by a rookie. I just want to see that game where he gets it, right? Where things just click and he goes off for, a 3 or 4 point night where he just, starts to feel himself. Like we saw that in the KHL a little bit with him last year, right? He, kind of go quiet for a couple games, but then there were games where he just was unstoppable. And I'm looking forward to the time for the game where that happens in the NHL for him. And I think it's going to come, and it's not going to be too long from now. So you're right, Larry. Caulfield and Suzuki, I think, I've talked about this before. They're like, you could almost like pencil them in on the A team almost every night, right? They're the most consistent performers on the team. Like when we talk about the Canadiens looking for consistency and the fact that they struggle to play a full 60 minutes and to put a consistent performance on the ice every night. What they're striving to be is more like guys like Suzuki and Caulfield, right? Those are the guys who are setting the example for the younger players of, here's how to be a professional. Here's how to be a guy who goes out every night, all 82 games, and puts, their best foot forward regardless, right? Those guys rarely have bad games, and even when they do have bad games, it doesn't really stand out. A bad game for Suzuki and Caulfield are games where you don't really notice them, right? It's not where they make multiple mistakes or they hurt the team or, as Marty St. Louis would say, do things to help the other team. Typically a bad game for them just means that they, they don't have their best game, right? Like they just they're kind of invisible a little bit. Slav with some heavy minutes tonight. Slavkovsky finished tonight with 22 minutes and 34 of ice time. I don't know if that's the most he's ever had in his career, but I'm going to say that's probably not far off. Demidov had 17 minutes tonight, so that's a bump up for him. I know that was a talking point a little bit going into the press conferences this afternoon. Slav, best player on the ice tonight for the Canadiens. Really, well, you said best player on the ice tonight. I think he was the best player on the ice for the Canadiens. I think that's probably what you meant, Entertap. But yeah, I agree. He's really coming into his own. For me, the biggest thing that I was seeing from him earlier in the season was just his lack of confidence with the puck. And now that's kind of clicking a little bit, right? I think that for him, he's feeling more comfortable and confident with the puck as far as, his passing, his shooting. I like to see him get his shot off a little bit quicker, and he's doing that lately. The extra responsibility that he's been given by playing on a line with Kapanen and Demidov seems to be helping him. It's maturity. It's a lot of different things with him, Entertime. And again, I'm not somebody who believes that some great transformation happened when he switched onto this new line. I think he's had a solid year since the very beginning. I think he's played well from the very start. But it's getting better. It's getting better and better and better and better and better. Hudson had 26 minutes and 3 seconds tonight. Matheson was 23-19. Hudson didn't have a great game tonight statistically, by the way. His expected goals for percentage was only 28%, which is not great for him. Matheson with 23-19, Slavkovsky 22-34, Suzuki 20-10, Dobson 18-51, Caulfield 18-40, Carrier 18-13, Jaden Struble 17-40, and Ivan Demidov 17-15. Those are some numbers there. I look forward to the day where those, where Demidov and Slavkovsky just kind of they go off one night, right? And everything they touch turns to gold. And, like I said, we saw it from Demidov last year. There were games in the KHL where he had, 3 and 4 points and just, starts to feel himself, right? And, get when a confident Demidov is, he's a force to be reckoned with. So, let's do a quick out-of-town scoreboard for you guys before we shut things down here tonight. Avalanche 3, Canucks 1 in the second intermission. McKinnon, Nelson, and McKinnon with another goal. So 2 goals for McKinnon, 1 for Nelson. Linus Karlsson has the goal for the Canucks. The Wild lead the Oilers after 2 on a goal from Jonas Brodin. The Blackhawks and Golden Knights are tied at 1. Oliver Moore has the goal for Chicago, and Ivan Barbashev has the goal for the Golden Knights. The Capitals and Kings are tied at 0 about 6 minutes into the game. Finals, you have the Red Wings 5 and the Bruins 4. You have the Islanders 2, the Lightning 1, the Rangers 3, the Stars 2, and the Maple Leafs beat the Panthers 4-1. Preds 5, Flames 1. So that's the out-of-town scoreboard. Some interesting stuff. I'm sure the Maple Leafs fans are going to let us all know about how they beat the Panthers. So that'll be something to look forward to, I suppose. Slav's advanced stats, better on L1, but on L2 he drives the line, and he seems to be embracing that role. Yeah, it's like I said earlier. I think he's playing a different role now on the second line. And like I said, for me, I look forward to when he's able to bring that all together, right? Like I think what he's excelling at now that he's on the second line is he's doing more of the play driving, right? Like he's he's carrying the puck. He's creating the plays whereas, on the first line, he was more of a guy who created room for the other guys so they could make plays. And, there will come a time where eventually he'll put those two things together and he'll be the guy who does all of that stuff, right? He can, and he's doing all of that stuff to a certain extent. Obviously, he doesn't have the support on the second line that, he has with Suzuki and Caulfield. But, those guys will get better, and, things will continue to improve. And, I look forward to it. I'm just watching Hudson and Tkachuk going at it here. I love Hudson, but less of the fancy stuff and get the puck to the net. Well, I'm very hesitant, Lucky, to change anything about Lane Hudson. I have very little to complain about from Lane Hudson, and I think he should just continue to do what he's doing. I don't want him to change his game at all. I don't know what you necessarily mean by the fancy stuff, but I think the edge work and the change of direction and all that stuff, that's the stuff that makes him really, really good. His ability to create space and time for himself and for his teammates is, that's what those are his strengths. Like, that's what allows him to do the things that he does, right? At his size, he needs to be able to create that separation in that room so that he can make those passes and he can, do those things that he does. And so I honestly, I would be very hesitant to ask Lane Hudson to change anything about his game. But I think that's going to be it, guys. We're coming up on midnight here in Halifax. It was a great show. I do appreciate you guys. Lucky, Entertap, Larry. Who else was asking questions here? Frank was in here asking some questions as well. Entertap, of course, always great questions from you. Antoine was here. Bushy, I do appreciate Bushy's efforts. Bushy is a game changer on TikTok, and he was also on TikTok directing people over here to YouTube to watch the show. So I do appreciate all that. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. C'était une bonne émission ce soir. Beaucoup de questions, beaucoup de commentaires. On a eu une bonne conversation au sujet du match de ce soir, mais aussi au sujet des Canadiens en général, où les Canadiens vont aller, les choses qu'ils doivent travailler sur, what the Canadiens need to work on, where they're going next. Fortunately, we do get to see them back on the ice tomorrow against the Winnipeg Jets. Another game right away. And so, we won't have to wait long for them to hopefully move back into the win column. We don't have to sort of hold on and wait, 2 or 3, 4 days for that. So if you are not yet subscribed, guys, please do so. Hit the button down below. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button yet and you're enjoying the content, I certainly would ask you to do that. All of those things help. I think we're still about 25 subscribers away from 500. That's a bit of a magical number when it comes to YouTube. YouTube gives you a lot of different things you can do once you get to 500 subscribers. Good night, Entertap. Good night, Lucky. Good night, Larry. All you guys, thank you so much for coming by. Like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell, give us a thumbs up. All those things help. Let us grow our community. Again, we're trying to, grow a space where we can come and have some fun, objective conversations about the Montreal Canadiens and hockey in general. So, merci beaucoup tout le monde. Si vous n'êtes pas membre de Recliner Sports, vous pouvez pousser sur le bouton en bas, joindre à notre communauté. On essaie de vous donner une place pour parler au sujet des Canadiens dans un sens objectif, intelligent. Alors, si c'est quelque chose que ça vous intéresse, on aimerait bien vous avoir comme membre ici. Thank you so much, guys. That's going to be it for tonight. We will perhaps see you after the game tomorrow night. I haven't decided if we're going to do a show tomorrow or not. Probably, but again, I don't want to make you any promises that I may or may not keep. So I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. And again, the Canadiens fall 5-2. Alors, c'est une défaite des Canadiens 5-2 contre les Sénateurs d'Ottawa. It's a 5-2 loss to the Ottawa Senators. We'll see you tomorrow night, the Jets and Canadiens. Have a great night. Thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Peace out.
To Hoffman, Monahan parked in front, docks to Caulfield, fires, scores!
You are about to enter Habs After Dark